Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, which you can find wherever fine digital radio streaming apps are available because they're widely available and they're free to download and they're free to use. And they are sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. It is a veritable cornucopia of sports topics here on the show today, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You could call or text it in. Producer Ray Dominguez is standing by, eagerly awaiting your correspondence. Kind of feels like the band is getting back together with the Colorado Avalanche, doesn't it? So Nazem Kadri has now played a few games back with Gabriel Landeskog, or a game, I suppose, because Gabriel Landeskog was out due to injury. So we had Kadri and Landeskog back together. And now we're going to add Logan O'Connor to the mix tonight when the Avalanche take on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Those are three guys that will have not played together since the Avs won the Stanley Cup. In addition to, obviously, McKinnon, Makar, etc. What kind of feels like the band is getting back together and getting Logan O'Connor back for the first time this season. It's good to have him back, and Logan O'Connor is happy to be back.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Obviously, it's been a long journey, roller coaster journey, but to be back now, I'm really looking forward to it. It's taken a lot of work to get to this point, long process, a lot longer than we thought it would be with something coming up, but I'm super happy to be in at this point.
And don't forget, he had hip surgery this offseason, which can be tricky. He referred to there that something came up, set him back in his recovery. Certainly, the Avalanche went through that with Gabriel Landeskog. The recovery from these kind of injuries and surgeries is not linear as much as you'd like it to be. And there was a time this season where you thought that Logan O'Connor would not play for the Avalanche, but he's here for the stretch run. Interestingly enough, he's back, and this is going to be the first 5-on-5 action he's had since surgery. By the time he was cleared, the schedule got so congested for the Colorado Avalanche that they just can't spare the ice time. They can't have a regular practice and have Logan O'Connor out there. They got to get ready for the next game and the next game and the next game. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes tonight for him. This is the first 5-on-5 hockey he's played since the playoffs last year. And if you think back to the Stanley Cup run, the goal that was his lone goal of those playoffs, but it was a big one. Game 3 of the St. Louis series. Series is tied 1-1. Avs down 1-0 with St. Louis having just won the game before that. A pivotal game 3. Avs down. Logan O'Connor on a breakaway beats Jordan Binnington. Makes it 2-1. Avs tack on 2 more after that. Win that pivotal game 3. And then all the other stuff happens, right, with Nazem Kadri and Binnington and St. Louis hockey fans. But Logan O'Connor's role, and that's why I say it feels like the band is getting back together, because the Avs, to varying degrees, don't win the Stanley Cup without Gabriel Landeskog, of course, without Nazem Kadri, but also without Logan O'Connor. I don't know that they do. Or at the very least, what Logan O'Connor in that fourth line did during the Stanley Cup run was what made them the wagon they ended up being. Jared Bednar could roll 4 lines. All 4 lines were productive throughout the postseason for the Colorado Avalanche en route to that Stanley Cup. And the role that Logan O'Connor is coming back to, it's the same, according to Jared Bednar.
I think a lot. Like, guys are excited for him to get back. Obviously, he's a heart and soul guy and a guy that helps drive our culture and the intensity of hockey games. He's a relentless guy. Get him back tonight. We get Colton back tonight. I think it's like helps make us a deeper team. You know, we start looking a little bit more like a full roster, and we can start experimenting with some things, like with some forward lines and matchups, and you know, just how we're going to try and deploy these guys come the postseason. So we have some work to do there, and Lekkonen's also getting close. So starting to feel pretty good about our lineup here, and we're going to move Naz back into the middle of the ice. So lots of things changing here tonight for our group, but one thing that can't change is sort of the mentality we've been playing with over the last few games.
And that's a big piece of this as well, with Nazem Kadri now assuming the role he was brought in to have, which is being the third line center and unequivocally the best third line center in all of hockey. And Jared Bednar mentioned Artturi Lehkonen not quite back yet, so we can't say that the Avalanche are at the point that the Nuggets were on Sunday with the Portland Trailblazers game. But they're getting very close, and they're as healthy because Logan O'Connor hasn't played all season. They're healthier than they've been arguably all year right now. And I can't say it's perfect timing because, you know, there's a little bit of a time crunch here to get figured out what Jared Bednar wants to figure out, but you have time, and you're getting these guys back before the regular season is over. Right, and that was some of the trepidation surrounding Gabriel Landeskog's return is you're going to bring this guy in to the mix in what, game 3 of the Stars series? You're going to throw this guy who hasn't played in how long right back into the mix? Now with Logan O'Connor, it's not going to be, you don't have quite that same level of, I guess if you want to call it worry, because the guy has played the last couple of seasons, just not this year yet. But it looks with Kadri moving to the middle, Logan O'Connor back, it's looking like, to Jared Bednar's point, the team that Chris McFarland assembled to try and win the Avs another Stanley Cup. But the question is going to become, when Artturi Lehkonen is back, who's the odd man out? Think about this, right? Like, we found this out with the Denver Nuggets on Sunday. Jonas Valanciunas is the odd man out. Can't play everybody. So who's going to sit? For them, it's Jonas Valanciunas. For the Avs, I don't know that there's perhaps the liability from any of these guys like there is with Jonas Valanciunas, and the worry that smaller second units are going to run the Nuggets off the floor. Really, it's just a matter of who's the most productive, playing with what line and which players, and what kind of identity, and Jared Bednar has talked about this a lot, the identity of those two lower lines, the bottom six. Now, I look at it, and I, just from my own thing, I say move Nick Waugh to the fourth line center with Parker Kelly and Logan O'Connor. You move Ross Colton down a line when Artturi Lehkonen comes back, so it'll be Colton, Kadri, and Kiviranta. That's kind of how I would look at it, which means Jack Drury is the odd man out in all of this. But my guess is that Yoel Kiviranta is the odd man out. Or that it will be between Kelly, Kiviranta, and Logan O'Connor. Right? Because you're not out of the woods yet with Logan O'Connor. You got to see how he responds tonight. They're going to give him more ice time as he moves forward. Those are three guys vying for 2 spots, the way I see it, when the Avalanche start the playoffs. Because I think Jared Bednar likes Jack Drury centering that 4th line, and you can't argue with the results from Nick Waugh. Brought into, we thought, to be a center, knowing he could play on the wing if necessary. It's been necessary, and Nick Waugh's been productive. So we'll see how this all goes. And the reality of this situation is, even when they get Arturi Lehkonen back, can you really bet that from that point on, the Avs are going to be completely healthy? Right? Which is the whole point of everything that Chris McFarland has done for the last 2 years. Everything, every roster move he has made has been about making the Avalanche a deeper team than maybe even they were in 2022, which is very difficult to do. Certainly. But he may have that. Like, time will tell, and if everybody is healthy, but it's also about depth to protect from injury. I would say the odds are that the Avs won't have all 13 of those forwards 100% healthy the entire way through the postseason. It's fun to play around with what it would look like if that were the case. But the reality of the situation is somebody's going to get banged up. Somebody's going to not produce at the level he needs to. And that gives Jared Bednar an opportunity to put somebody else in there. But you legitimately, right, once Arturi Lehkonen comes back, you have 13 forwards that you can make a case deserve to be in the lineup in their correct roles, but deserve to be in the lineup. And somebody's going to get left out, which is the dream if you're a head coach like Jared Bednar. So it's going to look more like the team that Chris McFarland envisioned tonight, still missing Arturi Lehkonen. And if he's back in the next week or two, then maybe we'll get a couple of chances to really see fully what this Avs team looks like. But if you're an Avs fan, you got to feel a little nostalgic here, right? Tonight is going to be the first night since the Avs hoisted the Stanley Cup that Logan O'Connor, Gabriel Landeskog, Nazem Kadri, all integral to that Stanley Cup run, all beloved. You could probably put those 3 guys up amongst the most popular and well-regarded Avs players, all together again, getting ready for the next playoff run. Now, that's the bigger picture of it all. Tonight, the Avs are playing a team that absolutely boat raced them the last time they played. And the Avs are still in this thing with Dallas. And I've said, these are the games that they need to win. You don't worry so much. I know everyone puts the significance of dropping a point to Dallas or Minnesota, but if the Avs put themselves in a position that they can afford to lose those games if they win these other ones. In terms of the math in the Central Division, this is another one. Pittsburgh's a good team. That's part of the reason why the Avs got beat by them. The bigger part is because they were wearing those hideous Quebec Nordiques uniforms that should be absolutely banned. So the fact that the Avs are wearing normal sweaters tonight should bode well. Here's what Jared Bednar says about keeping what happened just a few days ago fresh in his team's mind.
We have to have it in our memory. Like, this has been a quick starting team that's on you right away when the puck hits the ice all year long for everybody. And we didn't have a very good start to that game, and it put us behind the 8 ball. And then we were kind of chasing the game a little bit, and it opened up more ice for them as we tried to press as the game went on. So a big start. And that game helped us coming out of it. It was difficult to lose that way, especially at home, but I think it helped us kind of reset as a group and get going for the next handful of games. Now we've got to take what we've learned from that loss and from what we've done here recently and carry it into tonight's game. So I'm expecting a completely different effort and attitude and mentality from our group here tonight.
And completely different uniforms. Again, I cannot stress that enough. Avs and Penguins, 5 o'clock on Extra Sports 1300. Just getting going with this Tuesday edition of the show. Coming up next, one MVP candidate wants your vote. I'll tell you who it is next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Nuggets fans win 2 tickets to see the Nuggets take on the Spurs at Ball Arena on April 4th. Enter now for your chance to score seats to the matchup. Just head to nuggets.media/Nuggets vote to submit your entry today. It only takes a moment, so get in the game. And what you may be witnessing on April 4th is the culmination of the MVP race in the NBA. I believe at that point there'd still be just 1 week left in the season. And the guy on the San Antonio Spurs that is in consideration, Victor Wembanyama, is not shy about wanting the votes. Here's Wemby.
Defense is 50% of the game, and that is undervalued so far in the MVP race because I believe I'm the most impactful player defensively in the league. Second argument would be that we almost swept OKC in the season, and we dominated them 3 times with their real team.
Can I say, first of all, I love that he said dominate OKC. Now, we didn't beat them. Now, we didn't beat the reigning NBA champions. We dominated OKC in 3 of those matchups. So here's the first thing with Wemby. I have no issue whatsoever with him wanting the votes. I have no problem with that. I also have no problem with the Nikola Jokic way of thinking, which is he could not care less about the MVP. Different strokes for different folks. But what I will say is in a world where you are expected to be humble, self-deprecating, it is refreshing every once in a while that a guy is not afraid to say, yeah, I want this, and then lay out the reasons and use strong language like dominated or I'm the most impactful defensive player in the league. I have no problem with Victor Wembanyama campaigning for MVP, just as I had no problem with Joel Embiid campaigning for MVP back when he won it over Nikola Jokic. That wasn't the issue. I had no problem with Joel Embiid saying he wanted it. I had a problem with the discourse around that MVP vote, which not once did Joel Embiid bring up his race or Nikola Jokic's race into the conversation. So, yes, I poke fun at Joel Embiid and his lack of availability like everybody else. But I don't have a grudge against the guy, and I did not begrudge him for saying, yeah, I want to be the MVP. It means a lot to me. It's kind of nice to hear every once in a while that this award that we spend so much time and so much of our brains computing that it might actually go to somebody who cares a lot about it. What Jokic does is fine. And it's endearing in its own way. But when a Victor Wembanyama comes along, and this is just his whole vibe here. He is a little soft-spoken, but he's boisterous in his soft-spoken nature. Right? He beats his chest. He's not afraid to tell you how good he is. And we did love that about a lot of players. Right? Michael Jordan was not shy about telling you how good he was. Muhammad Ali wasn't shy about telling you how good he is. I'm not saying that Victor Wembanyama is on the level of those two. I'm just saying we have rewarded and appreciated the athletes who aren't afraid to say how good they are as long as they back it up on the court. And that's what Victor Wembanyama's been doing. He's been backing it up. And he has an absolute legitimate argument. Everyone's talking about, Shea and the Oklahoma City Thunder and how unbeatable they might be. Well, there's one team that would beg to differ. So how is that not weighing into the MVP conversation? Now, I don't want it to be the be-all, end-all, remember, because we did this with Embiid and Jokic. Some people said, well, Embiid beat Jokic, completely ignoring the fact that Embiid wouldn't play in Denver, but that's another thing. They looked at the matchups between Embiid and Jokic and saw that Embiid got the better of him, which he did, and said MVP. Well, that's a faulty logic too. We don't do this. This isn't boxing where the winner of this bout is now the belt holder. It's an 82-game thing. But it should count towards Victor Wembanyama, the fact that he has led his team to have more success against the reigning champions than any other team has. And his point about defense, it does matter. It should matter. And Victor, and I know this is an offensive-driven league. Like, I get that. But he's not, we're not talking about Victor Wembanyama. He's not Dikembe Mutombo here, who finished no higher than 13th in the MVP voting at any point during his career. Victor Wembanyama, and Ray and I looked this up today, there is a bigger discrepancy between Wemby's defense and Shea's defense than there is Shea's offense and Wemby's offense. When you look at it, maybe not, you don't see it in the numbers necessarily, but you see it in the efficiency, which has become more and more of a thing thanks to Nikola Jokic. So some of the evidence that we bring into our arguments for the MVP, Victor Wembanyama actually, as an offensive player, is not that far away from SGA as you might think. But you're going to look at the numbers and see that he's averaging like 24 points a game, 3 assists, something like that. And especially, and this isn't just SGA, this is Jokic as well. If you're going to make a purely statistical argument in the MVP, and notice how we've gone away from that a little bit. Do you notice that not many people are talking about sheer numbers for MVP? You know why that is? It's because Jokic would win. Jokic is going to average a triple-double. Jokic, by some of those metrics, is having his best season ever. We have had to kind of retire the statistical or the argument that's only based on statistics, because Nikola Jokic has kind of broken that to where the answer is inevitably him, but you can't keep giving it to him. And I would agree with that sentiment. It can't be just statistically driven. But if you look at it only in stats, Jokic has that in spades. So if we're looking for more nuance, if we're looking for more areas, why don't we include defense? And I think it's just, I think the reason is because we don't love defense. We want our teams to play defense, but we also don't love it. We know it's a necessary evil. But I would also say that Victor Wembanyama's defense is spectacular defense. This isn't like, Bruce Bowen back in the day for the Spurs, like just sitting down and guarding one-on-one. Like Wemby is making highlights on the defensive. Did you see the other night where the guy tried to do I don't know if he was trying to reverse dunk or a reverse layup, but he went underneath the rim, was coming out on the other side, and Wemby reached across the basket and blocked his shot. Like, it is spectacular defense that Wemby is playing. So everything that Wemby said in that clip, he's right, and it's why he should be considered. And why I said after Shea hit the game winner against the Nuggets, I said the next show I had, Shea is going to win the MVP. But I don't think that the MVP should be closed. I just said that was the moment that I think enough voters decided, yep, Shea's the MVP. But I advocated for us to wait to see how this went. And lo and behold, here comes Luka Doncic leading the Lakers on a massive winning streak. You know, Nikola Jokic back healthy. Maybe the Nuggets creep up into the 3rd seed, and then all of a sudden, do we have to have a conversation about Jokic? You should always wait till the end. But Victor Wembanyama absolutely has a case for being named the MVP. And I hope that voters are legitimately considering him. Because even though I concede that it will probably be SGA, I don't think SGA is one of the 2 most deserving candidates. I think the real argument is between Wemby and Luka. And I felt that way all season. I predicted that Luka was going to win the MVP at the beginning of the year, and I've been touting the Spurs, and I said the Spurs would be this year's version of the Rockets, and lo and behold, look where they are. This is not surprising to me, what is going on. But the argument is between Wemby and Luka, with Jokic and Shea and Cade Cunningham all having legitimate MVP cases. I'm not saying Shea does not have an MVP argument. I'm just saying he doesn't have the best one. And I don't think he has the second best one. And best player on best team, as Carmelo Anthony brought up the other day, is not a sufficient argument. It's one of the things that go into Shea's favor, but you can't just say best player, best team. Nobody wants that to be the MVP. We want more nuance than that. And when you get into the nuance and the way that Luka and Wemby have transformed the teams that they are playing for and where they have those teams in the standings, which is not where OKC is, I grant you, but it's not that far away. San Antonio's number 2 in the NBA. Lakers are the 3rd seed right now. I hope that I'm wrong about that game winner Shea hit against the Nuggets being the end of the MVP race. Because that would be a shame. Because I think that's one of the things to watch out for over these last 10 or 11 games is how Luka and Wemby specifically, but even Shea, Jokic, see how they finish out the season. Let's maybe for once actually make up our minds after game 82. Wouldn't that be a novel concept? 719-247-1313. Our question of the day, who is your NBA MVP right now? Now, on the subject of Cade Cunningham, the NBPA is going to bat for Cade because he is set, through no fault of his own, collapsed lung wasn't his fault, is going to be out a lot of money because of this 65-game rule. See if you buy the NBPA's argument to abolish it next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. So, of course, in the NBA MVP debate, you also have to factor in the 65 game rule, which today the NBA Players Association is pushing against the league on behalf of Pistons star Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham, collapsed a lung and will most likely fall below the 65 game threshold. And it is extremely consequential for Cade Cunningham because at his young age, he has the chance to make himself eligible for the Supermax if he were to be the MVP or all NBA. And when the NBPA pushes back, it's not so much about he deserves to win MVP. In fact, Cade Cunningham's agent piggybacked off of what the Players Association said and specifically mentioned that Cade Cunningham is an all NBA first team member, which, barring someone in the of the ilk of Jamal Murray or Jaylen Brown going absolutely atomic over the last 10 games of the season, I think that Cade Cunningham would be deserving of first team All-NBA, with Jokic, Wemby, Luka, and Shea being the other four. Remember, it's positionless. And I've said with the 65 game rule, Cade and Nikola Jokic are great examples. Before it was just Jokic, and then Cade got hurt, and now he has joined this mix. Because by the end of the year, the number of games that Jokic and now Cade Cunningham will miss is only because of injury. The NBA put this in place to curtail load management, which you could argue, has it really curtailed load management? But that's what it is in place for. Okay, well, here are two players in Cade Cunningham and Nikola Jokic who are not load managed. The games they have missed have been because of injury. Now, unless Jokic gets hurt between now and the end of the season, Jokic will get above 65 games. He will meet the threshold. He will be all NBA first team. But if Cade Cunningham doesn't appear again in the regular season, he will not. And I understand why the Players Association is fighting the way that they are. But here's my question when it comes to the 65 game rule. Okay? Is it worth changing the rule because of one freak injury at the worst possible time to a player who has all of these Supermax related things coming to him if he were to garner postseason honors? Okay, is this an extraordinary case when you make rule changes or when you make law changes to make a real world example? Do you look for the most extreme and remote possibility and say we have to make the rule or the law this because of this one example? Or do you have to take a more holistic approach and say this law, it doesn't, and no law is perfect. There's always, flaws, but is it, what's good for the goose is good for the gander type of idea? Is the 65 game rule overall good? It's going to be terrible for Cade Cunningham. Is it bad overall for the NBA? And that's what I've been asking really since Nikola Jokic got hurt. Because at that time, there was an MVP case, there's an All-NBA case, and we didn't really know for sure how long Nikola Jokic would be out. But I've asked all along, when we get to the end of the season, are we going to be saying that this rule is bad? Because right now we are on track to have one player negatively impacted by this. NBPA would make you think that every year guys are getting screwed over by this. And that's just not true. We are entering an extraordinary set of circumstances here. You want to tell me Victor Wembanyama, who played 47 games last year, should be on the all-defensive team? Joel Embiid, who played, what was the number, Ray, like 50-something games, it deserves to be MVP? So somebody has to tell me from the NBA Players Association, who are these specific players who have been so negatively impacted? I know in theory guys could be. Who has? And now they might have it in Cade Cunningham, but they haven't had it before. And the way they phrased their statement was almost if this long-held practice, which has been going on for 2 years, of making their 65-game threshold has just cost so many players awards and money and all of this kind of stuff. There's just no evidence of that. But there could be this year with Cade Cunningham. But then that's where my question comes in. Do you change because Wemby, as he's openly campaigning for the MVP, you think he's going to allow this Spurs to load manage him? Shea's another guy. He's nowhere close to missing enough games to drop below the threshold. But Shea, say what you want about Shea, and I know he's not the most well-liked individual in these parts, but how often does Shea get load managed? Luka's going to meet the threshold. And there was a time this season where it's like, oh, there's no way, Luka. We were seeing here 3 weeks ago saying, oh, Wemby's not going to make it. Luka's not going to make it. And look, here they are on track with about 10 games left to all make it. So we're literally talking about one guy. And I love Cade Cunningham. I love his game. And I have mentioned him as an MVP candidate. And it absolutely sucks what happened to him. But do you change a rule based on one player? I don't think that you do. And getting back to, has this worked in terms of load management? Yeah, load management still, I mean, tonight they call it injury management, but Peyton Watson is being load managed by the Denver Nuggets. Played against Portland. He's not playing tonight against Phoenix. So load management is still, I would say, alive and well in the NBA, if not rampant. But when we talk about these MVP candidates, Wemby, SGA, Jokic, Luka, these guys are making the threshold. So they're playing enough games. So can the NBA actually sit there and say it's working because the best players in our league are playing enough? I think that they can. And look, I'm no fan of Adam Silver, but the anecdotal, circumstantial evidence, whatever you want to call it, is there that it's working because, and Jokic is never a guy you have to worry about, but Luka you did, Wemby you did, and they might make it. So I understand why the Players Association is doing this. It is their job, and it is really unfortunate for Cade Cunningham, who has had a brilliant season, to see it come, at least the regular season, come to an end like this and maybe cost him millions of dollars. I legitimately feel for the guy. But you got to take the entire population into account here. And there is not a single other player That would be even go down a level. Jamal Murray's going to meet the threshold. Jamal Murray is going to meet the 65-game threshold. An unthinkable sentence to utter over the last few years. He's going to make it. Jaylen Brown's going to make it. I just don't think it's worth changing a rule over one guy. But I did say that we would have this conversation. Is the 65-game rule too punitive? I don't know that the evidence is there that it is. Now, we got 10 games left, and just like the MVP race, let's wait for this thing to be over. We can check in every once in a while and see how we're feeling. But we don't actually have to render our final decision until the season is over. If it's just Cade Cunningham, I don't know that that's enough to change the rule. If it's Cade and Luka, now I'm listening. If it's Cade, Luka, and Wemby, I'm all ears. But there was a lot of panic over that this would be a MVP by default, and the great irony of it, if you recall that conversation, is that the guy that was going to be the MVP by default was Cade Cunningham, right? Because at the time, Jokic had been hurt. Wemby was not on a great pace to meet the threshold. Luka had been out. And now, over the few weeks later, the paradigm is completely shifted. And now Cade is the only MVP candidate that may not meet the threshold. So let's wait another 10 games and let's see who makes that threshold and who doesn't. NBA's got a lot of problems. Adam Silver has messed up a lot of stuff. I'm not ready to throw the 65-game rule in there yet. And I understand why the parties that are going to bat for Cade Cunningham are. I would too. But a rule that was intended to impact the entirety of the league to be changed for one player in a special circumstance, I don't think it's worth it. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on that and our question of the day. Who is your NBA MVP right now? Coming up next, Jalen Waddle with his first selfless act as a member of the Denver Broncos. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in. Glad to have you on this Tuesday. Appreciate you listening and watching. Wherever you scroll, you can find this show on a daily basis. Granted that you follow at Extra Sports 1300 or at 740 KVOR. While you're there, like, subscribe, and most importantly, comment, because this is an interactive experience. Coming up this evening on Extra Sports 1300, it will be a double header as the Colorado Avalanche, now with Logan O'Connor back in the mix, and Ross Colton. But Ross Colton was on the other side of the ice in the Stanley Cup final, so it's not as big of a deal that he's coming back as Logan O'Connor is. Obviously, Colton played for the Lightning then, and also Logan O'Connor's been out for longer. But Logan O'Connor back, Ross Colton back, Nazem Kadri is center again for the Colorado Avalanche. That's at 5 o'clock on Extra Sports 1300, taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Then at, I hope you're sitting down for this, 9 p.m. Mountain Time, the Denver Nuggets take on the Phoenix Suns. Yes, 9 p.m. tip-offs are a thing. If you haven't been paying attention this year, you can thank John Tesh and NBC, because that's the channel that's having the game on. We've dealt with 8:30. We've dealt with 8:30 tips that are actually 8:45, but actual scheduled tip at 9 o'clock. I'll watch it for you and report back tomorrow. So you don't have to worry about it. But if you want to stay up late with me, I'll be watching that one. But you can hear both games right here on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, obviously, our normal evening talk programming. So, speaking of somebody that doesn't play for either the Nuggets nor the Colorado Avalanche, Jalen Waddle did something today that is normally praised, which is he restructured his contract. He gave money back, which is always a bold-faced lie. Tom Brady is the only guy that actually ever took less money, I think. Everything else is a restructure. And I guess good on Jalen Waddle for being at least amenable to it. But it is being reported today that the Broncos are restructuring Jalen Waddle's contract. They have converted about $15.5 million of his option bonus into a signing bonus for cap purposes. Now, what that means is basically, and this is why, don't go too overboard with praising Jalen Waddle. They have basically taken monies that they will end up paying him and just went, here's some cash, go buy yourself something nice. That's basically what it means. They're giving him actual monies instead of these contractually agreed to monies, but monies where teams have a lot of different outs and things like that they could, if they wanted to really stick it to a player, they could do. Right now, this is basically saying it's like if the J.G. Wentworth commercials, it's my money and I want it now. That's what the Broncos are doing. Here is a lot of your money, Jalen Waddle. You can have this now. And the benefit that the Broncos get is that they are able to only have Jalen Waddle's cap number at $8 million. So they basically cut in half what Jalen Waddle counts against their cap. It's a pretty good deal, especially, and this is where having Greg Penner, kind of nice. This is the advantage. Nobody's necessarily, I would say that this is agreed upon, allowed cap circumvention. I'm not an NFL agent. this really looks like cap circumvention. You have a cap number, and because you're able to do this thing with money, now you're putting yourself in a better cap situation. That feels like cap circumvention, but everybody does it. It's allowed. So no problems here. But this is the advantage that owners like Gary Jones and like Greg Penner have over some of their peers, right? Is that they have the ability to say, oh, cool, yeah, no, totally. We'll just write them a check right now. No problem. Valentine's Day sales were through the roof at Walmart this year. So Greg Penner's flush with cash and can give Jalen Waddle. That's the advantage that a deep-pocketed owner has in situations like this. So what this all ultimately means is not that, although I don't put it past them because I did doubt the Denver Broncos before, and then they traded for Jalen Waddle, I don't think that this is about another move of great significance. Because I think even the Jalen Waddle trade does fit the modus operandi of the Denver Broncos. He fits in to what they want out of a player in the skill set and all of that kind of stuff. This isn't reckless spending. This was very targeted spending in terms of draft capital and money to bring in Jalen Waddle. So it's very, even though it's a significant addition, maybe the biggest any team has made this offseason, it's still, you look at it and you say this tracks with who the Denver Broncos like and what they want out of guys at certain positions. I don't know that there are a lot of those guys left. So I'll be open to being proven wrong if this is about a bigger move, but looking at where their cap situation is, it appears to me like this is just housekeeping to make sure that, and even though they traded their premium draft capital, they still got a lot of draft picks coming up next month. You got to be able to pay all those guys. You never know if, somebody gets hurt and you got to go out and get somebody. This just seems like normal. We got to clear some space because there's normal NFL business that we're going to have to conduct between now and the start of the season that we need cap space to be able to do. So, I mean, it's good all around. But I know that, especially after the Jalen Waddle trade, that any time between now and the start of the season where the Denver Broncos are converting salary into signing bonus and clearing cap space, you're going to wonder if they're getting ready for another move. I just think you need a certain amount of cap space to be able to bring somebody in. If there's an injury, you got to be able to sign the draft class. That's what this appears to be. But good on the Broncos for being able to do it. Doesn't hurt to have cap space. And if you're the Denver Broncos, it doesn't hurt when you don't have cap space, apparently. But having cap space is better than not. So there's that from Jalen Waddle. One Jalen Waddle related question I was pondering. You fit Jalen Waddle into the offense, and I think he is going to benefit everybody around him. Bo Nix is going to be better. Cortland Sutton is going to be better. Marvin Mims is going to be better. The run game can be better. Jalen Waddle has a wide-ranging impact on this Broncos team. However, in order for this to really work, because let's not lose sight of the benefit to everybody else is great, but Jalen Waddle is being brought in to be a difference-making elite wide receiver. In order to do that, it can't be this joker stuff He's not being brought in to be a joker, which is a fugazi thing that Sean Payton has made up. Clearly, because Evan Ingram wasn't much of a factor this year. Like, Jalen Waddle's got to get the ball. Okay, so even though he benefits, the benefit is Cortland Sutton is going to have a chance to inflict more damage with the touches he gets. And same for Marvin Mims, and same for the running game. But everybody is going to have to give up some of their touches to Jalen Waddle. You can't just fit Jalen Waddle's 100 targets in with all the targets everybody else got last year and say this is the Broncos offense now. There aren't enough plays in the game for that to happen. So where are these coming from? And I think that the biggest, if we want to say most negatively impacted, but I still think it's for the best, I think it's Troy Franklin. When you look at the numbers last year, Troy Franklin was targeted over 100 times. He was the second leading receiver on the Denver Broncos. Neither one of those things will be true this year. Everybody is going to have to pitch in. Cortland Sutton's not going to get as many targets. Marvin Mims may not get as many targets. Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant, Evan Ingram. My goodness, can it go even any lower for Evan Ingram? But all of these guys are going to have to give up a few of their targets to give to Jalen Waddle, which they should be happy to do. The guy that's you're going to see, I think, the biggest drop in production, in gross production, if you will, is Troy Franklin. Cortland Sutton, still an elite red zone target, big-time third-down weapon. He's not going to see much of it, I think, in his targets. Marvin Mims, the Broncos already have him kind of in this sweet spot where they're not – you don't want to – you want Marvin Mims on the field, and you want him to be able to be a difference maker for you. I think they've already kind of figured out that balance with him. I think it's Troy Franklin that's probably going to get most of his targets that he had last year eaten up by Jalen Waddle, which is absolutely a benefit to Bo Nix, to the Broncos, and in Detroit Franklin in a way. Because, like, you remember Tim Patrick? Remember when Tim Patrick was healthy? Like, what a weapon he was? But he wasn't a weapon because he was available on every down. It was a lot of third downs. It was a lot of big plays. But he carved out a nice little niche for himself. I think Troy Franklin can have something to that effect. Because he's going to be the last guy anybody worries about. With the speed of Mims, the speed of Waddle, the size of Cortland Sutton, with Bo Nix's ability to run, with J.K. Dobbins, if he's healthy, being a productive running back, there's so many other things you have to worry about. If Troy Franklin's on the field, he's going to get one-on-one coverage, and he's going to get it with probably the lesser of all these corners on the field for a defense. So while the quantity may not be there for Troy Franklin this year, the quality will be. Troy Franklin making a big play for a touchdown, that's not going to go away. And those Oregon connections are strong. Bo Nix is still going to look for his guy. But I think the guy who has to sacrifice the most in that wide receiver room in order for Jalen Waddle to get the touches he needs to be the most effective he can be, I think it looks like it's going to be Troy Franklin. But I don't think that means by any stretch Troy Franklin will not be a thing anymore for the Denver Broncos, or you'll hardly see him. Now, a Pat Bryant, like, maybe he might be far less seen and heard than he was a year ago. but he was still at what, like 35 catches or something like that. Again, Troy Franklin was over 100 targets. The guy that has to give up the most to accommodate the addition of Jalen Waddle, to me, is Troy Franklin. But it's all in the name of the Denver Broncos offense being better than it was a year ago. And by extension, maybe the Broncos being better as a team than they were a year ago. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, what was the other NBA thing? Oh, how everybody in the NBA, in the top, I should say the top 5 seeds in the West, all want to, including the Denver Nuggets, all want to play one team in particular. And I wonder if it's going to cause some manipulation of the standings towards the end of the year. I'll explain next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Celebrate Colorado sports on March 30th at Ball Arena as the Avs take on the Flames for Rockies night. Each ticket package includes an exclusive dual-team baseball hat. Secure yours now at coloradoavalanche.com/theme night. That night will also double as Nazem Kadri revenge game. So that would be two reasons. Rockies are starting on Friday. Did you know that? Tomorrow night, Major League Baseball season open. The Giants and the Yankees. Knock up on us, didn't it? Not talking baseball yet. I want to talk NBA here. Remember in the bubble when Michael Malone, and this was his big idea before he said we have to get the first overall seed at all costs and burned out his team, and that was turned out to be the beginning of the end for him in Denver. And it started this whole debate about Michael Malone not relying on the depth and all that kind of stuff. Remember that? So before that idea, his idea was to manipulate the matchups. So there were these seeding games in the bubble. They played a couple of regular season games, right? Quote unquote regular season games. Then they played seeding games. The Nuggets manipulated, another word for tanked, their seeding games in order to see Utah in round one. And the reason why Michael Malone moved off of the seeding manipulation and moved on to we got to get the first overall seed at all costs was because it nearly burned him. Because the Nuggets did get Utah. They were successful in manipulating the matchup, and they proceeded to go down 3-1 to Donovan Mitchell and company. And before the emergence of what we now affectionately refer to as Bubble Murray, the Nuggets were in big trouble. So I do not advocate matchup manipulation, seeding manipulation. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a preferred matchup. And whether you are, and San Antonio and OKC can't do anything about this. As we look at this next year in the Western Conference, Denver, the Lakers, Minnesota, and Houston. As those four teams look at one another, and it's very possible that those are the matchups, right? Two of those teams will play, and the other two of those teams will play. The other three, Denver, LA, and Minnesota, are all looking at each other saying, we want Houston. Because this is what's going on with the Houston Rockets right now. May I present to you their head coach, Ime Udoka.
Or start disrespected the game, not prepared from the get-go. Just non-aggressive, following around, watching them shoot. They have nothing to lose. They're going to fire away. And obviously to give them 41 points in that first quarter is disappointing. It was one quarter that killed us, and weren't prepared to play at all.
Yeah, they got beat by the Bulls, who are in that group of teams that are manipulating their draft order, if you catch my drift there. The Houston Rockets, with about 10 games left in the season, are losing to the Bulls. The Houston Rockets, and this is not new, I've been telling you about this for a couple weeks now, are coming apart at the seams. And many people will blame Kevin Durant's burner account. Some people will blame Kevin Durant. Whatever the reason, the fact is that the Houston Rockets are now dropping out of that tier. Right? OKC, San Antonio, at least for what they've done this year. Right? I have my doubts about San Antonio running the table and winning an NBA title this year. But the way they played this season, they deserve to be Those are the two teams that have played at a consistently high level all year long. San Antonio, OKC. Then you have this group of really good teams that all fashion themselves as championship contenders. But on a night-to-night basis, you don't know what you're going to get, and that's Lakers, Minnesota, Denver, and Houston. Well, now, because of what Houston's doing, Houston has dropped to a lesser tier than that, because I don't see anybody, nor should anyone, take the Rockets seriously as a title contender anymore. You want to make the argument about Denver or Minnesota or LA. I may disagree with you on one or more of those teams, but I'm willing to hear you out. Houston, no. They're done. That's the team that Minnesota, LA, and Denver all want to play. And I played the audio yesterday. I should have left it up here. When David Adelman was talking about his small but not really small lineup with the second unit, he brought up two players that we say are small but aren't really small. Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith, who both play for Houston. Perhaps some sort of a Freudian slip from David Adelman. I think the Rockets are the team that everybody in that group wants to play because they are cooked. They are done. The KD experiment did not work. But I would not suggest anybody manipulating the matchups in order to get Houston. It is bad juju. Do not do that. It nearly cost the Denver Nuggets. And the team that should do it less is the Denver Nuggets. What they should be trying to do, and the nice part about this too is the way it's trending, it actually might work out perfectly because the Rockets may end up the 6th seed, which means if the Denver Nuggets just keep winning at a higher clip than the Lakers, the Nuggets, their prize for pushing through to the end, figuring out some of their consistency issues and winning a lot of games, is they'll get Houston. They'll get Houston, and they will also get San Antonio in the second round, which is, I think, a better matchup than going against OKC. So the Nuggets actually don't have to manipulate anything the way it's going. But if Houston, bounces back and is able to win a couple of games and these other teams, then it might get a little bit muddier and we may see some teams trying to manipulate their way into playing Houston. But right now, it looks pretty clear. Houston's continuing to fade. If the Nuggets push forward and they're able to topple the Lakers, then they'll get Houston in the first round, San Antonio in the second round, and we'll get the Denver OKC matchup in its proper place, which is the Western Conference Finals. As of now, it would be the Nuggets playing Minnesota, then playing OKC, and that is a less ideal road for this team. But the Houston Rockets are coming apart at the seams. And I have a theory as to why. Let me throw my 2 cents into this. A lot of people blaming KD's burner account. And that can't be great for morale to know that your teammate is anonymously on Twitter just destroying you. Okay? But I really think the reason is Ime Udoka. Remember in Ime Udoka's last job? So Ime Udoka, if you don't remember, was a very successful coach with the Boston Celtics. Won a lot of games. Everyone thought they were on the verge of being title contenders. And then Ime Udoka decided to have an inappropriate relationship inside the Celtics organization, and he got let go. Joe Mazzulla came in, and the next season, they win a title. watching the Houston Rockets fall apart the way they are and listening to Ime Udoka having no other, he sounds a little Michael Malone-ish. Like Michael Malone towards the end was very much more stick than carrot. And it didn't seem like he could change it up at all. Ime Udoka is just continuously, and it's a young team. Kevin Durant's not young, but Thompson and Şengün and these guys, they're still young players. And every time I hear Ime Udoka speak, he is just trashing them. I wonder if, even though it wasn't the Celtics' plan all along, if actually what happened with Ime Udoka, it might have been the best thing for them. Because maybe Ime Udoka is one of those coaches that can turn a very bad team around. But taking them to that next level and winning a title, he may not be equipped to do it. I wonder that more every day as I watch the Houston Rockets. It was not the Celtics' intent to ever lose Ime Udoka, but now you're looking at it and you're coupling the fact that the Celtics did end up winning a title with Joe Mazzulla and what's happening with Houston. And you're like, well, was this going to be inevitable? Was there going to be a plateau for Boston where they would have to make a move? I kind of wonder if Ime Udoka is part of the reason, just not that guy able to. And some coaches are built just to turn around teams and not built to win championships. Just like teams. There are some teams that can go from being bad to very, very good. But to make that turn to a championship team, some teams don't do that. But that's the path you want if you're a Nuggets fan. You're moving forward. You want them to get the third seed, play Houston, get still largely untested San Antonio. Playing a play-in team is not really the way that San Antonio all of a sudden becomes battle-tested in the postseason. You get San Antonio round 2, and then you take your swings with OKC. Rather than the alternative, which is right now match up with a team that's been a bit of a nemesis of yours in Minnesota, and then get OKC in round 2. Nuggets and Suns this evening. On paper, should be a game where the Nuggets can gain more ground. Last night was a good night. Lakers lost to the Pistons. Houston self-destructed against the Bulls. That helps Denver. Now, can they help themselves tonight by winning the first game of a back-to-back? 9:00 p.m. on Extra Sports 1300. Have more Drive Time Sports after this. Coming up at the top of the hour on Extra Sports 1300, it'll be the Avalanche and Penguins. Late scratch for the Avs. No Nick Waugh. What has been a highly productive addition to the team. He was the move before Nazem Kadri. He is out tonight. Lower body, upper body, what does it matter? He's not playing, and you're not going to be able to surmise anything. I mean, for instance, and I understand why they don't specify what part of the body is injured in hockey, because it's just, and in fact, I think that the NFL, and I know the answer on why they don't, it's because betting, but in an ideal world, football should probably adopt the hockey mentality of it's an upper body, it's a lower body injury, right? Because in football, like hockey, you can target. Not that I would expect everybody in the league to suddenly, decide to go after somebody's knee, but all it takes is one, right? And in the NFL, you know that a guy is dealing with a knee issue. NHL, we're usually able to figure it out after a certain amount of time. But I understand why they say lower body, upper body. And just, and when they don't get specific about why Gabriel Landeskog was out these last few games, other than saying it was a lower body injury. Yes, just below the waist, lower body, because a puck from Cale Makar hit him. That is the lower body injury. There is no other lower body injury that is as much lower body injury as that. But at any rate, we may find out soon enough why Nick Waugh isn't playing and be more specific than what half of his body it is. But the important thing is tonight they will not have him, so they're a little less full strength than they even were, which kind of underscores the point I made earlier. Yes, the Avs now have 13 capable forwards that Jared Bednar gets to choose from. But in all honesty, how many games from here on out is Jared Bednar going to be able to choose from 13 healthy forwards? I mean, tonight he already wasn't because Arturi Lehkonen wasn't going to play. And now it's another one. And it's just my point that it's fun to theorize what that bottom six is going to look like when everybody is healthy, but the reality is they're probably not all going to be healthy at the same time. And then in that case, you're happy that you have 13 guys that can potentially fill 12 spots, because if one guy gets hurt, that means at least you have 12 capable guys to put into your lineup. So no Nick Waugh tonight. That will not impact Nazem Kadri, who will be the third line center. We'll see exactly how these lines end up stacking up, but Jared Bednar has already said that Nazem Kadri is going to be playing center tonight. So you get to see him back in the role he had when he helped the Avs win a Stanley Cup. So that game is coming up here in a little more than 15 minutes from now. Nuggets, late tip tonight against Phoenix. And it brought up a conversation. Maybe you heard this on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday, or maybe you've seen it on social media since. I'll be honest, I saw it on social media from Paul, the executive producer of the Dan Patrick Show. And I think the conversation was about all the very, very late college basketball games. What's the ideal time zone for watching sports? And the consensus was Mountain Time, which is correct, by the way. And just so if you're just, maybe visiting or you just moved here, this is why when we walk around and we talk to people about sports, this is why we have an air of superiority around us. Because in the Mountain Time Zone, we see everything. We do. The games on the East Coast start at quitting time, right? 5:00 are the East Coast games. And the West Coast games, the latest, well, they start a bit later than the 8:30, but it's still a manageable time for people for these 8:30 tips. Tonight's going to be 9:00. That might be pushing it a little bit. But for the most part, if you really want to watch any game in any sport at any time, and you're in the Mountain Time Zone, you can. So we see what goes on the East Coast. We see what's going on the West Coast. And we especially see what's going on in the middle of the country, because that's the part of the country we want to defend. If there are athletes or teams in the middle of the country that are worth talking about, we want to trumpet them, because we know that the West and East Coast will not. We are in the perfect spot, which should also make you think for a second that maybe we shouldn't complain as much as we do about how late games start. Because, for instance, in 9:00, you're pushing it. I understand it. But that's 11:00 on the East Coast. Who in the world is going to, and I experienced this last year when I was in Puerto Rico. I tried to watch, I think it was a Nuggets game. And I am like, my God, I can't even make it. I can't make it to halftime. And I'm somebody who stays up very late. But just the idea that you're going to lock in to watch a sporting event, by the time I'm getting ready to go to bed, I'm watching like I Think You Should Leave or The Office. Like, my brain is kind of starting to shut down a little bit. The idea that a consequential sporting event that I want to be locked into is starting at 10:30, 11:00 where I am, like, that's a lot. So maybe a little bit more grace for the folks on the East Coast, understanding their plight. But at the same time, I think it is reasonable for the other time zones and media members from the coast to also understand that when someone in the Mountain Time Zone says something, probably right, because we probably saw what happened. Because we got the full range of games that are within our capability of being able to watch. And that's just not the case everywhere else. So I'm glad that the Dan Patrick Show got to the right answer. It is Mountain Time. We are in the perfect spot. And so, not everything we say is right, but just maybe when we're saying, hey, there's this tall Serbian guy on our basketball team. Like, he's really good. Maybe you should pay attention. You should watch this guy. Maybe listen to us. We've seen this guy. You haven't, because Nuggets games start at 10:30 in your time zone. Maybe just take our word for it that this tall Serbian guy is really good. What a moment of vindication for those of us in what has been called the forgotten time zone. Not forgotten time zone, best time zone. Although 9:00 is, it's pushing me, but I think it'll be okay. Like I said earlier, I'll watch the game if you don't. You can't stay up. I'll report back to you tomorrow. That's kind of what I'm here for, anyway. All right. So no Pete Watson tonight for the Nuggets. Everybody else, good to go. First night of a back-to-back. And we know that the Nuggets are better on the second night of a back-to-back, or one of the better teams, I should say, in the second night of a back-to-back. That makes tonight a little tricky because we know they're going to win tomorrow because it's the second night of a back-to-back. But does that make tonight a little bit of a trap game for them? I mean, they play Dallas tomorrow, so it's not like either one of these teams are showcase games that you get up for, but tonight could be a little tricky. I would say Avs, because of the way the last game went with Pittsburgh, I think the Avs are going to be locked in. I think they'll be ready to go. Doesn't mean they'll definitely win, but the effort won't be lacking. The game was, 10 days ago where they got absolutely shellacked by Pittsburgh. They'll be ready to rock. And of course, boosted as well by the return of Logan O'Connor. Nuggets tonight, we'll see. That might be the tricky one. That would be, if I were putting my confidence level in both of these teams, my confidence level tonight in the Avs is higher than the Nuggets. But you could argue that both of these teams need to win these games. And more so the Nuggets than the Avs. So first of that doubleheader coming up at 5, Avs, Penguins, and then 9 o'clock, it will be the Nuggets and the Suns on Extra Sports 1300. Before I go, though, I would like to bring you a word from the fine folks at Low T Center. If you ever wake up after a full night's sleep, we're talking about having to stay up to watch games, but you go to bed at a decent hour, no 9 o'clock tip-off. You wake up the next day, and your body still taps out immediately. Like, nope, don't have it today. When I got sleep, I did what I was supposed to. It may not just be because you're getting older. It may be because your testosterone levels are lower than they should be. And that's why you need Low T Center. They specialize in this stuff. And it's not one-size-fits-all mystery doses. They use pharmaceutical-grade testosterone. It's the highest quality on the market, and they customize it to your body. And because it's covered by most insurance, you don't have to necessarily break the bank just to feel normal again. And right now, they're offering you no downside, free men's T-test. Go in, take the test. Zero risk, zero commitment. And then you get the answers you're looking for. And if you've been curious about peptides, maybe for energy, recovery, sleep, weight loss, they got discounts on those as well while supplies last. So if climbing a flight of stairs feels like competing in an endurance event, maybe it's time for a change. Head to lowtcenter.com and book your free test today. That's lowtcenter.com. It has been my distinct honor and pleasure to serve you on this Tuesday. Back tomorrow will be a busy show with everything that is going on with the Nuggets and the Avalanche. Enjoy your evening, and we will chat tomorrow.